Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another day at B is for Build. In today's episode, we're working on the 240Z and we're gonna try and figure out what's got the transmission so upset. A lot of you guys know that the transmission is in a limp mode, limiting us to 3,500 RPM in each gear. So I'm gonna jump in there with computers and eyes and hands and try and diagnose it, fix the issue that's got the transmission upset, so we'll go out of limp mode and hopefully we will be unlocked. Stay tuned. So on the transmission, we got lucky. A lot of really smart BMW technicians and diagnostic people have offered their help. But the way I always like to try and do this is first take a whack at it myself and gain as much knowledge as I can on the situation. That way, if I do have to bother those guys, at least I have some stuff ticking in my head, some thoughts and some knowledge on the subject, so I'm not kind of driving as blind as possible. So that's what we're gonna be doing today, and then if we get totally stuck, we're gonna kind of call for help overnight and maybe tomorrow or whatever. I'm gonna start by plugging in the computer. We're gonna plug in the computer, run all the diagnostics. We did a clean refresh of the computer. We wiped all the codes and we reset it basically before we did the drive out at SEMA. So whatever we have on here are all real codes. They don't have to do with building or anything because we haven't changed anything mechanically or electronically since then. So let's plug the computer in and scan it and see what's up. Alright, so I started jumping into it with the computer and I kind of got stuck on one thing, and I saw that Eric from Norway was online, so he is helping me out right now. He's taking a look at some different troubleshooting of the SMG. I know that from before we had a wheel speed sensor issue, so I'm going to go ahead and if there's any downtime there, I'm going to keep working with him, but I'm also going to remove the rear wheel so I can double check our wheel speed sensor connections. So I was working with Eric and he showed me this really interesting diagnostic thing where it thinks our doors are open. And I thought I had that problem solved because we saw a drastic change in how the computer was working, whatever. The computer does not think the doors are shut. So the only way we can test if that throws the car into limp mode or not is just to walk outside and grab Chelsea's M5, open the doors, take a drive down the road. Sounds smart, right? All right, Chelsea, hop in. We're gonna do something really stupid. Leave your door open.
Okay.
We might want to slightly shut it a little bit, but don't shut it all the way. It's got to think the doors are open.
Okay.
All right. Seatbelt, safety.
Yes.
All right, car's warm enough. Time to do a door open drive.
Oh.
Yep, doors are open. What are you gonna do about it? Oh, one shut. Do you care?
Why are you going so fast?
Because we gotta test this. Doesn't. Alright, it is not in limp mode. It does not care if the doors are open or not. Alright, we confirmed that was not it. Moving on to the next thing. Don't worry, there's plenty of things to check. Okay, I jumped into the rear wheel sensor and both sides are connected as we thought. They're connected properly. So here's kind of the receiving end and, well, the female end that goes into the knuckle right back here. Here's the male end. Now we extended the wires, but I double checked that, you know, that each wire is on the right side. I didn't swap them around on accident. Sometimes some sensors do use cable length in some scenarios, but most cars cable length does not matter. So I'm definitely not going to consider that as too much of a serious issue. So that leads me to thinking that there's probably a fault further upstream. So jumping into the back here, I've been trying to diagnose and look. Oh, it's real dark. Look at the path that the cable takes upstream. So I've unbundled some of this stuff and I'm going to go ahead and plug in a lot of the BMW computers that we have. Never throw those things away, guys. They're all in that box right there. We're gonna plug all those things in just in case if any of those things seem to route through there, like the GPS module or anything else like that may be deadheading the wire on accident. Because we have both the left and the right speed sensors are both off. So I don't think it's just like one weird wiring fault, because if you guys remember, the loom kind of goes all the way that way and then around and all the way back up. So they're basically independent of each other. Then they're not on the same path through. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug in all the computers and just by hand, trace the wire through and make sure that it's not deadheaded. Like, here's some matching wires that are deadheaded, but those are for the speaker system, so it gets a little complicated. What's up, guys? So it is a new day. I told you guys transmission stuff can take a while, but a lot of really interesting stuff, and I had a learning experience with the vehicle, the wheel speed sensors on this car. So last night, what you guys saw me doing there, I was just tracing the wires. In retrospect, should have been using software to see what the readings were. That would have saved me a lot of time. Maybe. Possibly. So I need to remember to do that. The other thing though is, so I started texting one of my tuners, Zach, who you guys saw at when we were at SEMA. He was helping us out with, and he's also the one that tuned the engine. I was texting with him about the wheel speed sensors, asking if my extending of the wire would have broke them. And he said, you know, probably not. But then he started talking to me about wheel circumference and the tire diameter, radius, circumference, basically, of the tires, because it immediately clicked to him, which I did not even think of, that if we have 4 wheel speed sensors and you have smaller wheels on the front, you have larger ones on the back, the vehicle might get pissed off because it's going to see that the car in the front is moving much faster than the car in the rear. So BMWs did not come with staggered wheel size setups or anything like that. So he actually read in the documentation and found that you can only have around a 1% variance in difference of the size of your front tires to the size of your rear tires. And I'm not talking about width or anything like that. I'm talking about the whole circumference around. So you got to think about the rolling distance. You have a smaller one in the front, that's going to be rolling much faster than the one in the back if it's, well, you know, really big. So it's going to see those revolutions. The sensor's going to pulse every time the thing does an orbit. Anyways, getting a little too technical, but that's a learning experience for me, and I wanted to shout that out to you guys, so you know as well. If you have a 4-wheel speed sensor vehicle like this, don't think about staggering the wheels like I did. So I was like, damn, man, we're completely screwed. And he found out too that it throws a really mean error when that happens. So I was like, man, is the build stuck right now? And he came up with a really, really great idea, which is to take the signal that's coming from the front wheel sensors and emulate it to the back wire. So we're basically gonna splice it and send the same signal that the front left is sending, not just to the front left of the computer, but also to the rear left of the computer. Same with the front right, also to the rear right. That will also help because, you know, when you go through a corner, your inside wheels are going to travel less than your outside wheels. So hopefully that'll help match up the front and the right and their distance traveled. So it seems like a pretty good solution. I'm really excited to get started on it. So I'm gonna go ahead and find the wires. A lot of wire tracing right now. Finding the wires for the front wheel speed sensor on the left, trace that back, find the wire for the rear one. Gonna essentially kind of connect the two or splice the rear into it. And then we'll use the computer to read it and see if it's happy. Okay guys, so went a little bit off script there. I thought I was gonna be jumping into the wires and cutting stuff and splicing stuff. Eric happened to be online and we started talking about things, and he was showing me through the software and how to use some other stuff like the brake bleeding procedure and stuff like that. So Eric doesn't believe, because he has tested on his drift cars, that the staggered wheel size will be an issue. He doesn't believe it will be. So then we just tried to figure out the wheel speed sensor issue, which we figured out. Such a stupid problem. Mine are broken from the years of use. The cases are kind of shattered and stuff like that. So when we plug them in, it felt like they were plugged in and secured all the way. Turned out they weren't. They needed an extra, like, really, really hard amount of pressure that we weren't giving it. So once I gave it that, it's seated in all the way. Everything in the car is reading correctly. So right now the transmission has 0 error codes that it's throwing. It's a fresh brain. It's time to go give it a drive and see what it thinks. Before I do that, I'm gonna make some slight suspension changes. A lot of you guys noticed that the right side of the car was kind of sagging a little bit more. Now that could be a lot of different things. It could be slight geometry changes with where the strut tower is. Maybe it's off by 1/2 inch. It could be that the body is just mounted lower on the frame on that side. It could be one of a bunch of things, but it seems to have shown itself a little bit more after we've been driving and using the car. So like we said, or it could be that the engine, since it is offset to that side a little bit, it could just be the actual weight of the engine weighing down the suspension. Now, we mentioned this and you can tune that out with suspension, so that's what I'm gonna go ahead and do. We're about to lose daylight, so I'm gonna hustle up real fast. I'm gonna jump over to the right side and raise that right side up a little bit so it's equal to the left side. And we're gonna set it down on the wheels and take it for a spin. Okay, I just finished adjusting the passenger side suspension height so it matches with this side, and we got both of our rear wheels on. Moving over the front, there's one last thing I want to do before we take a drive. I hope I'm not forgetting anything else. But you guys remember I mentioned that this airline is kind of in a dangerous spot. It can get hooked by the knuckle, and then when the knuckle turns, it can put a lot of pressure on it and almost break it. So I'm gonna go ahead and use the jack, relieve a little bit of the pressure from that strut right now, loosen up the top thing, and I should be able to swivel that whole cylinder, pointing the airline out kind of more that way, and that'll make it a lot safer. Make sure we don't hook it on that knuckle. I gotta do the same on both sides. All right, front struts are fixed. That's fixed. Let's go ahead and jump in and make sure it still starts. Kick the system all the way on. There we go. Throw it into neutral. Fire it up. The trusted limp mode. Wait, has it gone away? So now it's not saying anything about the transmission, it's saying engine malfunction, reduce power, drive safely. So if I'm in neutral, a lot of you guys said you wanted to hear some revs. Here's what it sounds like. So that's made some weird sounds in the back. But anyways, that's over the rev limiter, but let's go ahead and get into first gear. That's over the limp mode rev limiter, I should say. So we're in first gear. Let's go ahead and try and get over 3,500 RPMs. Okay, we're not in limp mode. This car needs an alignment so badly. Well, all right, guys. We're in some sort of limp mode, but we're not really in limp mode. When we were at SEMA, 3,500 RPM in gear was all we could get. I just got to 4,000 RPM in first gear. It's not in limp mode anymore. We did something right. Back from SEMA, a lot of you guys mentioned that you wanted to hear the car rev. Now I was doing that in the last video, but I guess you guys missed it. So here's some revving goodness for you. Such a fan of that car. So it's kind of weird that it says that it's in limp mode, but on the engine side, we don't have any major engine errors. On the transmission side, we cleared it, and then, you know, driving down the road, now we're getting all the RPM in the gears. So I think if it's an engine, I don't think the engine is in limp mode, but I think, because like for instance, when Chelsea's car was in engine limp mode, when we had a misfiring cylinder, it limited me to 3,500 RPMs. In neutral, in any gear, in anything, the engine was always limited to 3,500. We have, as you could hear right there, the full range of the RPMs. We have a full range of the RPMs for the transmission as well. So I'm really not sure if that's a real thing or not, or if that's just kind of a remnant of our engine tuning, which I'll contact Zach and ask him about that. But I guess we won't really know if we're getting like full horsepower until we get it on a dyno. I am really overjoyed right now because that is another huge thing checked off the list. No more worrying about the transmission. We can get all the RPMs out of each gear. amazing. So I want to say a huge thanks to Eric out in Norway for helping me. He was teaching me through the software, showing me how to check if we fix things or not, so I can troubleshoot through there, and he helped me recalibrate the steering. So why the transmission was messed up is one of two things. The steering angle sensor was throwing an error, and we fixed that, and we also fixed the wheel speed sensors just by plugging them in all the way. Such a stupid problem, but sometimes that's how it is. But luckily with the software, you can really see, like, is it fixed? Is it not? Is it fixed? Is it not? You can just run it through, so that's really cool. And thanks again to Eric. So now, when I was driving down the street, we got going fast in second gear. I don't know how fast, but 4,000, 5,000 RPMs in second gear. Car's super squirrely on the street because the alignment is not done. So I've ordered all the tools, all the parts, everything I think I need to do a full vehicle alignment, rear wheels and front wheels, which is kind of the hard part because anyways, I'm not gonna get into it. I'll explain that in the next episode. So that's the next one. We're gonna align this car and then we'll go out and drive it again. And man, if we get the alignment nailed, then I think it's just some small stuff. Oh, he also showed me how to open up all the brake actuator things to bleed the brakes factory style. So, brakes are working pretty good as it is now. I mean, I got up to like 50 and I wasn't worried. But anyways, that's it. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much for the support. This is a kind of monumentous thing for me right now. I feel like we're getting it just so close. All right, guys, I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. Peace!
Come on.